Hey everyone, Untangled Viners listeners, welcome back to Untangled Vines, redefining the rules of work. I am Zach Wright, your guide through the intricacies of the modern work landscape. Today's episode, we're going to dive into practical strategies and insights for building a robust remote work culture. So, join me as we explore the Grapevine vineyards, come on, vineyards of virtual collaboration and cultivating success in the world of remote work. If you're interested, stay tuned and intro. All right. So, in the ever expanding popularity of remote work, laying a strong foundation is crucial. We're going to get straight into practical strategies to set the stage for a thriving remote culture. In this episode, we're going to break it down into 3 segments. So, first, we're going to talk about the foundation of remote culture. The second one, we're going to talk about nurturing collaboration, and then we're going to finish with cultivating engagement. So let's go ahead and start with segment 1, foundation of remote culture. We've talked about this topic in several episodes, some with guests, some solo episodes, but this is the non-negotiable foundation of remote work, which is clear communication, and not just clear communication, but clear communication channels. So what we want to do, or what you want to do as a remote company, is establish clear and effective communication channels. Now, obviously, we're going to promote Grapevine software because a few reasons. With Grapevine, you can utilize the chat functionality that lives within Grapevine. You can utilize the executive newsfeed that allows executives to promote something or deliver an announcement to the entire company, and that is backed up by notifications. You're also going to be able to have company updates or company announcements that are in a different section still on the intranet. Another notification is going to be there. People can click into that and learn more. But you're also going to have the community page where people can foster culture by delivering more than just their professional self. They can talk about anything that they want to as long as it's appropriate. But that is what we're talking about. Have clear guidelines around effective communication. For example, email might be the way that you communicate to your direct manager, to a customer that you're working with through support tickets, or you might have a specific tool. For support tickets, for example, a lot of support people leverage Zendesk or Groove. And so if that's the case, that would be your communication channel. But I would take it a step further and get very specific on how do you update people on these support tickets who aren't in Zendesk. Is that a Grapevine chat feature? Is that a community update? Is that a Slack channel? Is that a text message? You don't know, right? You don't know until you clearly identify what that is going to be for your organization. So establish that clear and effective communications. I mentioned it before, but Workplaceless founder Tammy Bielen talks about a communications charter. I highly recommend that because now it's not only what you've said, it's what you've documented, and you can point back to that if you're managing someone who's not following those guidelines, or if you're onboarding someone, or they'll just have the ability to explore that to make sure that they're doing what is needed and what is understood in the community or the culture or the company. Now, the next bullet point on clear communication channels is ensure team members have access to the necessary tools and resources. So this goes back to the example where I was mentioning, if you have Zendesk for your support team, but not everybody in the company has Zendesk, make sure that you clearly identify how that is going to be communicated to the team. For example, if a support team has access to Zendesk, and they're the ones taking the tickets and doing the work and then updating them and resolving them, how is the outputs or the outcomes communicated to, one, the customer, to two, the customer success manager, and three, anybody else like a manager, a director, the CEO, depending on how involved they are, right? Identify who will need access to that tool, who will receive updates in another tool, and identify if they have access to that tool. Grapevine is a simple way to do that. This is not going to be a full promotional video, I promise, but it's just a simplistic way to do that. So you have one central location where you give all the updates to the employees and everybody involved. But other than that, whenever it comes to resources, now this goes into your knowledge management system and the way that you share documents, the way that you share branding guidelines, the way that you share sales materials, the way that you share product updates, whatever the resource is, you want to make sure that those right people have access to the right resources, or else they will not be able to perform their task that you ask them to do, right? It's like asking somebody to cook a steak on the grill without having a steak, right? That was the best metaphor I could come up with off the top of my head. Now, the one that I'm adding here will also kind of be sprinkled throughout the other segments as far as nurturing collaboration and cultivating engagement. But the one that I'm calling out here is creating an operational cadence within your team and organization. So whenever it comes to organization, as far as an operational cadence, maybe you have KPIs, maybe you have OKRs. What is the method that we're going to use to ensure that we're staying up to date on those, right? And the reason that I threw this in under communication channels is because with KPIs and OKRs, or an operational cadence specifically, you are setting a foundation where you're ensuring that you are going to connect with your employees, you are going to connect with all your team members, and you are going to connect on a level that is consistent, right? You can always throw in ad hoc meetings, ad hoc requests, and different things like that. But whenever you have an operational cadence, it allows employees to understand what is expected of them and when those things that are expected, right? Maybe that was too meta. But in addition to operational cadence, outside of OKRs or KPIs or the strategy, you want to break this down to team and individual level. So what type of team meetings are you going to have, right? Let's go back to the organization for a second. You might have all hands or company all hands meetings every quarter. At the end of the quarter, at the beginning of the quarter, you're going to digest and run through a retrospective of how we performed. And that's why I said KPIs and OKRs, because you can leverage that material to input that into an operational cadence of a company all hands, where you discuss the outcomes and what to look forward to in the next quarter. Now, if we break that down into team, it's going to be more on a regular basis. Maybe you have weekly team meetings where you're discussing your specific departmental or team strategy and goals, and how are we achieving those goals? How are we progressing on those goals? You can also have a way, maybe it's just a stand-up meeting, like a 15-minute stand-up meeting every single day, where you're asking the group, okay, Zach, I know that you're working on Project X, not Twitter. You're working on Project X. Where does that stand? What are your goals for the week? What can we do to help you achieve those goals? And what do you need from us, right? So it depends on how you want to operate, but the goal is to have that operational cadence. Now, when we go into individual level, we also want to talk about one-on-ones, performance reviews. What are you struggling with? How are you feeling? Do you have the necessary materials, the resources, the tools to execute your position appropriately? Right? And this is very, very important whenever it comes to a remote environment. I remember whenever I was working at Kumu and I was managing the sales engineers, that was the mixture of team meetings and consistent one-on-ones was the way that I got my information and the way that I was able to help my team, right? I'm a big believer that if you have a one-on-one on the schedule, you try to move that as minimally as possible. You try to follow through unless you're out of the office, unless they're out of the office, unless they have a conflict with like a customer meeting or something. You want to keep that on the schedule as consistent as possible because that allows your employees to know, okay, I can reach out to Zach at any time, but I know that on Wednesdays at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, I have a one-on-one with him. So I'm going to bring that up with him there. Right. And now in Grapevine, you're going to be able to, whenever we get completed with our My Office MVP number 2, minimum viable product number 2, once we get completed with that, you'll have the capabilities to do employee management on a day-to-day basis, like one-on-ones, team meetings, and you can update the agenda. And so that's where the combination of tools and operational cadences come into play. Because if you can have an operational cadence of team meetings and one-on-ones, that allows your team to use a tool to go in and type in agenda items that they want to talk about, right? And the manager does that on their end too. So it's the mixture of being able to do that. That consistency will allow you to have better communication, better alignment with your team. And then if you have an intranet or a knowledge management system, that aligns the entire company along with OKRs, being able to track performance and so on and so forth, right? The other part with communication channels on how to operationalize this is to outline and document standardized work processes, or they've also been called SOPs, standard operating procedures. And what I want to call out here, because this is important, I've been working in strategy and operations for a while. Change management is included in there and rolling out certain new initiatives for different teammates across the entire company and specifically for different teams and departments. And what I've experienced, I've done it myself at the beginning. And even sometimes if I get caught up, this will fall to the wayside and I'm to blame. So I want to help you out here. Whenever it comes to creating a standard operating procedure or an SOP or a new initiative or a new strategy that you're trying to get the entire team on board with, you have to make sure that one, you provide clarity on the expectations, you provide clarity on the deadlines, you provide clarity on project milestones if you're creating these things. Now, whenever they become actual SOPs, you want to make sure that people understand, okay, this SOP is completed, this standardized work process is completed, and now hopefully they were involved and they helped you out, because that helps reduce the risk of people being non-adopters of what you're building or what you're implementing. But let's say that they're involved, you got it completed. Now becomes the time to enable people on it, train people on it, make sure that they understand exactly what it is that you expect, exactly what it is that it means, exactly what it is of why we are choosing to document this and make it a standardized work process in our organization. Allow people to ask questions, allow people to have the ability to request or suggest improvements, because if you get the employee involved, they're going to be more likely to buy into that, right? Okay. So that is segment 1, right? Let's take a deep breath. That was a lot in there. But again, that was foundation, building the foundation of a remote culture. And I think I added a couple other things in there too. So you can apply that to where it makes sense for your team, your company, and your culture. So let's go to segment 2, nurturing collaboration. And this is why I said operational cadence will sprinkle out through the other segments, because that's just a big underlining thing that a lot of organizations miss out on, or they don't take advantage of. And in a remote environment, you can't let those things slip. That's what I love about remote environments, to be honest, is because you can't let things slip. If they slip, you're going to know, right? So remote environments actually make you more conscious of how you're operating with your team, with your processes, with how you connect with customers. The list goes on. Okay. Segment 2, nurturing collaboration. Okay. Let's set the stage. We're going to focus on this among remote teams, obviously. Virtual collaboration tools. So whenever we're talking about nurturing collaboration, this goes back to what I was talking about with the structure meeting the tool to have the best of both worlds, right? So you want to implement a virtual collaboration tool. Again, selfless promotion, Grapevine software. The reason that I say Grapevine opposed to anything else is because of the differentiator that we are creating, right? A lot of companies will have an intranet, they'll have a chat functionality, they might have a knowledge management system, they might have a digital workspace, maybe. But typically they only have one or the other, or if they do have a combination of them, they're in separate companies, they're in separate tools, they don't play well together. So the reason that I'm promoting, I mean, obviously the reason I'm promoting is I'm the founder of Grapevine. I wanted to be successful, but to be honest with you, I do believe that it is going to be one of the best out there as far as a virtual collaboration and communication tool and a knowledge management system that has digital workspaces, that has department portals. So if we think about this, right, implement a robust virtual collaboration tool. In Grapevine, you have knowledge management, so you can search and find anything that anybody uploads into the virtual office platform, is what we call it. You'll be able to chat in real time, like you would with a Slack, with a Google Chat, with MS Teams. You'll be able to chat directly in Grapevine. And the other thing that is impressive for me, I love this feature that we're going to have, which is if you go to your repository, your document repository, and you're on your chat, let's say it's down here if you're watching, and then the knowledge management or the repository is here, you can drag that document into the chat. So you can search, find it, drag it directly into the chat. Just think about how easy that is. And also, if you upload something that isn't in Grapevine, you upload it to the chat, you upload it to your My Office, you upload it to the intranet, it's going to be pushed into that repository. And so now you don't have to have it live on your desktop. You don't have to worry about losing it because it's in Grapevine. But again, there are other tools out there. For example, a product team might need a more specific product tool that something like Atlassian offers. Jira, Confluence, you name it, there's a lot of tools out there, right? I mentioned Zendesk earlier for support. We're not gonna cover everything, but whenever it comes to collaboration, whenever it comes to communication, whenever it comes to knowledge management, we're gonna be your people, your product. Okay, the other thing is you want to foster real-time collaboration through shared documents and project management platforms, right? So that kind of goes into what I was speaking about a little bit earlier with dragging that document into the chat, being able to share it, being able to save it to your My Office, and then it becomes part of your key documents within Grapevine. But at the same time, the project management platform is something that we're not focusing on at the moment. So again, Jira, Confluence, Asana, Trello, what is it, MS Project. There are tons out there that you and your team can collaborate on. And really what that is you're just having a Kanban board, and you're having, okay, here's the backlog, here's the to-do, here's the in motion or in progress, here's in review, here's on hold, and here's completed. It's basically just a way to keep up to date on all the projects that you have going on, or all the initiatives that you have going on. I can see us later down the road having this option, so stay tuned for that. But there are tons out there that are really great. Asana, I used that for my previous consulting company. It was great. It did what it needed to do. It has some gamification with the unicorn on there too. So more power to you. But the goal here is to have a collaboration tool that makes it easy for remote organizations to communicate and collaborate with one another, right? That's the goal, to continue on building the foundation of a remote company. Okay. Now we kind of touched on this too. And again, this is nurturing collaboration segment. So scheduling team meetings, we talked about that with operational cadence, but you want to establish a regular schedule for team meetings. I've already explained the benefits of that and the reason why I think that's so important, especially in a remote environment. I will add this. Whenever I was doing product validation, and we're always doing product validation, but whenever I was specifically doing product validations before we started hitting development phase, I was talking to chief product officers. I was talking to chief executive officers. I was talking to founders, VPs of HR, CHROs, head of HRs. Those are our ICP, right? And so whenever I was speaking to them, one of the concerns that they had about with remote, and these are 100% remote or hybrid organizations, one of the concerns that they had was loneliness, because we see that if you are not intentional with your remote work foundation, your remote work tools, and the way that you operationalize the things that you're doing in your company, remote workers can often feel lonely, right? And that's why we have a virtual break room. If they feel lonely, they can click that button, go in there. That's the spontaneity that people are talking about. That's why they want people back in the office. Well, guess what? Now you don't have to have the people back in the office unless you just absolutely want to, or you give them the choice. I digress. But the part with loneliness is now they have set times that they know that they're going to speak with somebody. And so on Mondays, whenever I worked at Kumu, I had team meetings with my sales engineers. Now I have, we just moved it from Tuesday to Wednesday due to some changes, that now I have a product development call with our developers every single Wednesday at 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, right? That is our operational cadence. But then there's also other communications through WhatsApp until we get Grapevine's MVP number 1 up and running. But the goal here, and the reason that I mentioned loneliness, is because that was one of the key factors that came across. And the ability to have regular scheduled meetings allows that person to not feel disconnected to the organization. It allows them to have good conversations with teammates, team members, and then their direct manager. You think about it, you're building relationships with people each time that you communicate. And the additional thing that I'll offer here as a piece of advice is, don't always have your one-on-one only focus on the business. Talk about their family. Talk about them as a person. Talk about their goals and aspirations in your career or on a hobby. Get to know the person, not only professionally, but personally. That is going to go a long way, right? That is how I manage. That's how I lead. That's how I hope the people who work with me, who go on to be leaders, I hope that they take that from me. Oh yeah, I mean, not just from me, but I hope that that's something that they implement into their conversations with their eventual direct reports. Okay. The next one here is use video conferencing to enhance connection and engagement. So that just ties into, instead of just being on the phone or a blank screen, actually see the person, right? There's statistics out there. This is for sales specifically, but you're more likely to close a deal if you are on camera, even if the customer is off camera. The reason behind that is because they see you as a person. Right. I know Simon Sinek has been out there, and Patrick Lencioni. These are some of my great, favorite authors and speakers, but they are out there saying that you can't recreate in-person connection. Well, my manager at Kumu, who's now my founding advisor, Alex Couture, we didn't meet for probably 10 months before we actually met in person. Our relationship and foundation was built through the way that you're looking at me now if you're watching this podcast episode, right? And so I fully disagree. You can build full-on relationships that interact or imitate in-person connection by having your camera on, by having real conversations, not just about business. So I'll stop there, but turn the video on. It doesn't have to be a requirement all the time, but turn the video on, have those conversations, build those relationships, ask the questions that aren't only about KPIs or goals in the business. Ask them about their family, ask them about their goals, their aspirations, and you will see a difference. They're going to be more likely to invest in you because you've taken the time to invest in them. Okay. Preaching over. Let's go ahead and move on to segment 3, which is cultivating engagement. So as we move forward, we're going to explore this strategy for cultivating engagement in the remote work environment. So employee recognition programs. Now, a lot of times people think this falls just on human resources, but I think the way that you should look at it is, whenever you're introducing employee recognition programs and acknowledging and celebrating individuals and team achievements, you want that to be in partnership with HR and the business leaders, the CEO, and all of those people combined, right? It shouldn't just be an HR function. It shouldn't just be one leader doing this for their team. It should be sprinkled throughout the entire company. And you build that culture by being intentional. And so with Grapevine, whenever we talk about my office again, or your digital workspace, your digital desk, so to speak, you will have the capability to provide feedback. And whenever I think about feedback, I think about it in a few different forms. So to me, feedback is reward and recognition. That's one category. Feedback is constructive feedback for improvement. And then feedback is just a simple call out on something where somebody took an initiative and did something to improve the company or move the company forward or move the team forward, or it's really based off of your culture and your core values. So in Grapevine, we're going to have that feedback structure where you can give back, you can give reward, recognition, praise, you can give constructive feedback. It could be private, it could be public. If it's constructive, please let it be private. If it is a reward and recognition, understand how that employee likes to be recognized, because not everyone in your organization is going to enjoy the public praise, the public recognition, right? So that doesn't mean that you don't give them praise. It just means that you tailor it and you give them praise in a private fashion, right? And so also within Grapevine, you'll be able to connect that feedback to the core values that you have. So eventually I'm going to show these details in a product, a series of product videos. So stay tuned for that. But that's what I'll say there. Just whenever it comes to employee recognition programs, make sure that you acknowledge and celebrate individuals and team achievements as you grow, especially in a fast moving constantly changing world, environment, and company, right? So that's the first part of cultivating engagement. The second part is flexible work hours. Right now, you might automatically think that remote work, oh, it's flexible, I can do whatever I want. Not necessarily, right? It all goes back to your communication charter. It goes back to your communication channels. It goes back to your remote work policies, your remote work strategies, right? So make sure that employees understand what it is that you expect of them. But for cultivating engagement, let's talk about flexible work hours. So whenever we say flexible work hours, it means that you're not necessarily requiring employees to work 9 to 5 anymore. You're allowing them to work a set of hours in the day or during the week, and then you just want to make sure that employees know how to manage their time effectively as they balance their personal and professional commitments, right? For a real example, as I'm working remotely, I have all the rights in the world to go get my haircut at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 30 minutes away, 30 minutes back, and then I get back. So in total, I'm probably away from my desk 2 hours. Now, as long as I schedule that around my meetings, around my deadlines, around my projects, around communication with others, that's perfectly fine. That's what we mean by flexible work hours. You don't have to be tied to a desk. You don't have to be tied to your house, to an office. As long as you have your laptop or you can do the work on your phone or your tablet, so be it, right? As long as the work gets done, allow the flexible hours. Okay, so that is how you cultivate a strong remote work culture. And just remember, it requires a thoughtful blend of communication, collaboration, and engagement, right? So whenever you implement these practical strategies, you're not just creating a remote team, you're fostering a community that thrives in the digital world of the modern workplace, right? So I hope that this breakdown of how to cultivate a remote culture is helpful. I hope that you're able to take away some of these segments and apply them into your remote organization. And they do work for hybrid organizations too. I just wanted to focus on remote for this specific one because you have to be very intentional. Because as I mentioned, that loneliness can set in, proximity bias can set in. If you don't make these things a requirement for your team, like not a requirement as the employee needs to do this, the organization needs to build this in their foundation for the remote company to build that remote culture. And so again, I hope that this is helpful. If you have any question, as always, reach out to me. You can reach out to me. We have a email that you can reach out, info@grapevinesoftware.io. Shoot me an email. Find me on LinkedIn, either on the Grapevine page or my own personal LinkedIn page, or just drop a comment if you're listening to this on YouTube. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you on the next Untangled Vines Redefining the Rules of Work episode.